Welcome back to the shop.
I'm Rob, that's Jeff.
And we're standing next to a big butcher block. This is a 36-inch by 120-inch maple butcher block made by Bally Block. I think are they in Pennsylvania or are they in Michigan?
It says made in USA right here.
They're a butcher block manufacturer, and our main plywood supplier, Fezenden Hall, sells these. So we were contacted by a kitchen designer, and her client needs a butcher block for their island. And we explain basically how much it would cost to build, or how much it would cost for us to purchase one, size it, finish the cuts, and install it. And that's what they went with. So we need to cut this now. Tip it first.
Ready? Yeah.
1, 2, 3. This was about $500. So for us to build this, 36 times 1.5 inches, so you're talking 10 by 3, that's 30, plus it would start out as 8/4, 60 board feet of maple, $300. Wait, well yeah, hard maple, that's about $300 of material, plus all the time for us to mill it, glue it, sand it, finish it. There's no way that we could ever produce this for that price.
So I have my track saw set up. We love the track saw. This thing is great. We use it all the time. And if we didn't have the Strebig, that's how we'd be cutting this and trimming it to size. I got two fresh batteries in here, and we just want to trim off a little bit just to show you the difference between what a track saw can do and what the Strebig is going to be able to do. I know the finished dimension is about 9 inches off the edge, so we're going to just take off 2 inches, cut it really heavy, just so we have enough, to make our final cuts on the Strebig. Not bad. I mean, if we didn't have another way to do it, it's going to take some sand in here on the edge to get those burn marks out.
The rip cuts, really the bad one. Because crosscut's not too bad.
Yeah.
Definitely sanding burns out of maple's tough, but doing the rip cut, it's really hard on the saw because as anyone, who does a lot of woodworking knows, rips are much harder than crosscuts.
Yeah, but it's a good saw, but we'll show you the new way to do things.
Yeah, we're going from, I don't know what the horsepower rating is on that, but the Strebig's 5 horsepower, so. That cut wasn't bad, but now, as that was just a demonstration, we're going to bring the butcher block over here to the Strebig and show you how we'll be doing it now that we have this tool. So we just have to grab this big thing and throw it up on here.
Piece of cake. We'll put that end in.
This side, yeah.
It's nice and sharp on the edges.
Jiminy cricket. Let's put the bottom out because it's the bad side anyway. On the Strebig, it's the opposite of a table saw. It's not the top, but it's the outside face is where you may have tear out, whereas on a table saw, the bottom side is where you may have tear out. So we put the bottom of the butcher block out. I'm a little out of breath from...
I was wondering about that. I was like, how are you going to be able to do that?
That thing was heavy.
Yeah. How much do you think it weighs?
I don't know, 250 pounds?
It was a lot. It was cutting into my fingers.
Yeah. Not if you had moving DexFit gloves. Not sponsored. So I think we've shown the Strebig a little bit before. Basically, we have our vertical cutting stations. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So anywhere where there's that little red dot, you match up your red tab. So we're in this second cutting station, which is where the majority of the cutting on the Strebig happens. If you can make a cut in this position, this is where you want to do it, and you try and make everything right here. It's just the most efficient. So what we're going to do is we'll square up this end, and then we can set a stop and square up the other side. Then we'll have to make one rip cut, and then we'll have to make another rip cut because we want to cut off all these factory edges basically. So it's as easy as just taking, this is the side that was cut with the track saw, and you can see these little kerfs. That's where the blade is going to be. So, I mean, you could see how easy, you saw us carry this and how hard it was. This is how easy it moves on the Strebig. So let's see, we have plenty to work with, so we'll cut off, where's that snipe? There was some snipe on this top that we want to remove. I think maybe you got it, right?
Yeah.
So we'll cut off a couple inches. I hit dust collection and make the cut, or Rob's going to hit dust. Here's our track saw cut, burnt and, was it effortless?
No.
And there's the cut with the Strebig. And I mean, literally no effort. And it's a glassy cut. This isn't a brand new blade either. Literally just, all I could feel was the weight of the head. And that's it, so. Definitely works very nicely. We know that it's perfectly square, because the saw is calibrated to be perfectly perpendicular to these rollers or parallel when the head is in the horizontal cutting position. So we'll grab our dimension and set our stop, and then we can move to the far end, to the far cutting station, and cut it to length there. We'll get our digital stop set up here. So you might be saying to yourself, how are you going to cut 111 and 5/8 as our final dimension? You know, this is less than that. So we're going to move down to our far cutting station, and we can account for that here. This self-calibrates every time, so there's a magnet back here, so it knows exactly where it is. Now it's calibrated. So we can hit this. You see right now we're at 38.545, 78.55. So I moved it a little bit. There's 40 inches between each one of these cutting stations. So we want to get to one that, so now we're at 118, and then we can get to 111. 111 5/8 would be 625. We're going to leave it a hair heavy just to make sure that we get a good cut, and then clean it up if we have to. So 111.66. This is our stop. It was a little bit longer, but I messed up. But we have a new one coming tomorrow. So this is a part, just a part by itself, just this. So we'll take our block, pull it down. Obviously you don't want to slam into your stop. It is very sturdy, but I should note that we have a fine adjustment here. So once you lock this down, let's say I really want it to be at 111.675. It's kind of hard to like tap this thing and get it right in the right spot. So you see if I turn this knob, I can fine adjust by 5 thou. So here for kicks we'll go.
Let me get in there.
We'll go 111.675. Our stop is set. And the saw is locked in here, so we need to unlock the saw and move it down to this last cutting station. We have a little over 120 inches of cutting capacity in terms of width. So I know that at 111, we're in this last station. So we line up these red marks and just lock it in. Now it can't move. We can hit dust collection, make the cut. Wanted to make sure that we got the best section of this because we're cutting roughly 28 inches out of a 36-inch wide butcher block. So we pulled it off again real quick. We have this nice tilting cart and found where we want to cut it. So I'm able to pull from what will be the bottom up to our dimensions so we know where to set the saw. Down here we have a little stop. So when you're doing I don't really call it a rip on a panel saw, we'll call it like a horizontal cut. You have your vertical cuts, which are typically cross cuts, and your horizontals, which are typically rips, but they're not always. So we have this little stop, and that'll stop this piece so that we can make this horizontal cut. And this is pretty cool in that when you can keep this up, and when you load a piece in, it'll actually come across and it'll pop back up. It's on a magnet. But a normal piece will just, a normal piece, not my hand, it'll go over the top of it and it won't stick it back down. So you can continue to make these horizontal cuts without having to reset it. We also have one here on our mid fence. So we can bring our piece down. Now we have something to bear against. We're gonna take the saw out of this horizontal cutting position so that we have, side to side movement. We're going to pull back on these and we can turn the head of the saw. So now we're in this horizontal cutting position. We want to go all the way down here. This is the compact, so this is the smallest Strebig that they have. We're almost maxing it out here. You can see we have a digital readout. So right now the saw is at, about 29 and whatever, 13/16. We can change the height. So we want to make our cut at 30.5. So again, we have 5 thou increments. We could take our handle here, lock that. So now it won't move up and down. And same thing, we're going to turn on dust, turn on the saw, and we can make this cut. I will say that when you're working horizontally on the Strebig, you want to keep a shim in your pocket because this is going to want to pinch. We do have a riving knife, but if we have, 105 inches, we're all the way down here, of cut hanging back there, it's going to want to pinch. So we're going to stick this in midway through the cut and just let the cut open itself up. So. Something that we could talk about now because it's about to happen. When we set this saw at a point where it's going to cut into one of these horizontal ribs, it'll actually move them out of the way. So if I plunge this in, you can see it moves them up and out of the way. You know, so you can never actually cut into those. So now we'll make the cut. What we'll use this for, I don't know. Might be able to cross cut it and make a small top, but it's always nice to have something like this around. What we can do now is we'll flip the piece over. Rob and I will take the piece and we'll flip it over, and then we can set to our final dimension, cut that off, and we're all sized up. We'll just tip it out and...
All right, with the good side out?
Yeah. All right, like this. Got it? Yeah. We reset to the final dimension, 28 1/8, and we can make our last cut. This is a great example of how it hinges open like that. So if you put your shim past the midpoint, you know, it's going to open up like this. So you can see we're touching down there and we're wide open over here. So we're not dancing around on the blade and, you know, putting burn marks into this piece. A little bit easier than the track saw, and, you know, we're yielding a much better cut. If you've worked with maple before, you know how hard it is and how hard to sand it is, especially the end grain. So the time that we're going to save, I mean, aside from all the other benefits of the Strebig in breaking down plywood and all those things, the time we're going to save just on sanding on a project like this is outstanding. So we're happy to have it.
Oh, yeah. And it's much easier than pushing across, you know, a regular saw, too.
Yeah. You know, anytime you have to excessively sand an edge, you run into the risk of deforming the edge. They make these fancy 90-degree sort of like sanding contraptions now. But, you know, if you have to sand out a burn mark here, the odds of you hollowing out that section are very high. You know, we're human. It's hard to feather in an entire edge. So this is a good preventative measure, you know, to keep that from happening. We have our top all sized up, 111 5/8 by 28 1/8. The last steps would be to sand these edges. We're going to put a 1/8 inch round over on them. We're matching what the stone edge treatment is in this kitchen. And then we're going to finish all of our cut ends with this finish that is supplied by the manufacturer. So this is a pretty easy way to do a wood countertop. And you can see it looks nice. It's a nice maple countertop. Mm-hmm. And for $500 and, you know, a couple hours labor, You know, you can have a nice butcher block in your own kitchen or in a client's kitchen. You don't always have to build everything. We've sort of eaten several slices of a humble pie learning these things that what
Yeah.
we appreciate isn't necessarily what the client appreciates in terms of what they want to spend their money on. We talked about it with the drawers, buying versus building. This is another great example. If the budget's not there, buy a butcher block. Don't make it yourself. If you have any questions about butcher blocks or any of our other videos, or there's anything you'd like to see, make sure to let us know in the comments. Follow Today's Craftsman on Instagram. Listen to the American Craftsman podcast. John was on last week. And tell your friends.